Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time we're talking episode 2 of season 1 of The Flash called Fastest Man Alive. And yeah, this show continues to not disappoint. Now that all the basic groundwork for the series has been laid in the pilot episode, now is where we can really start getting into our characters and fleshing things out. And of course, one of the first things they do is just basically start in what we think is going to be the typical narration, sort of very similar to what we get on Arrow, and then they immediately undercut it. And this is very much from the old Joss Whedon playbook. Set people's expectations up, then undercut them. And it's a classic move, but it works. It immediately shows you that this show is not going to be the same as Arrow. It's got its own groove, its own energy. It's a much lighter and more fun show, and oh baby. Now, the real crux, I think, of this episode in terms of characters and what's going on with them is the relationship between Barry and Joe. Joe is the first person who isn't one of the Star Labs people that finds out Barry's secret. And again, it's kind of funny with Joe. They're sort of rolling both Alfred and Commissioner Gordon all into one, which makes for a very interesting dynamic. And what's really cool about this episode is that both Joe and Barry are right. Joe is right that Barry has no training in dealing with things of this nature. Barry's not a fighter. On the other hand, Barry is also right that the cops are just completely and utterly unprepared to deal with this sort of thing. Look at what happened when, in the last episode, Joe's partner got killed by a weather wizard. So the thing here is, though, of course, that Joe is just amping up what he's already put to Iris. He's basically said to Iris, no, you're not becoming a cop. Go off to college and become whatever. And Iris has apparently opted for, thanks to Barry's influence, for journalism, even though, interestingly enough, she's not all that thrilled about it at the moment. Now, in the comics proper, adult Iris is in fact an award-winning journalist, as so many superhero girlfriends tend to be. But here again, we're kind of seeing Iris at the ground level. But we'll talk about her some more in a bit. We want to get back to Joe and Barry. And the thing here is that Joe is basically saying, yeah, Barry, okay, you took down the one guy, but you're really not qualified to do this. You're already a member of law enforcement. Don't run around and try and be something you're not, because you're gonna just get yourself killed. And this leads to the ever popular among people in Barry's situation who have kind of a step parent in their lives of yelling at him, "You're not my real father." And of course, in the flashbacks, we also see that young Barry, harbored some resentment towards Joe in the same way. Again, Joe just trying to look out for Barry, but, well, younger Joe not exactly doing it in the best way. But understandably so. After all, a prison is really not a place where a kid really should be. But anyway, getting back to things in the more modern day. So again, this is really just a classic example of a parent not wanting to let their kid be in a dangerous situation. But Barry is like something in the neighborhood of like 25 years old. I mean, he is a grown man. He can make his own decisions. And this is the decision that he's made. And it's one that Joe has to respect. But and I do like how Joe does come around at the end and realize that, yeah, it's true. Ordinary cops like him are just not equipped to handle this. But Barry is. Or Barry, better yet to say, Barry can be. And Joe can't hold Barry back on this one. Now Harrison Wells puts it really great after everything that happens, that Barry's enemy here isn't multiplex, it's doubt. And when we see Joe come in there and encourage Barry, tell him, I believe in you, that I believe that you can do this. I mean, you can just see Barry swell up. Everything that's been on his mind, everything's been dragging him down, holding him back, that vanishes. Now that doesn't, make the fact that him win easy. Barry still has to struggle, but he's not being held back. It's all on him. And he shows that I can rise to the challenge. I just have to believe that I can. And then we get that very nice reconciliation scene with him at the end, where Barry admits that he was wrong to. Where they both admit that they were wrong to each other, basically. And Barry has that really great speech about how Joe did all those things for him growing up, and even though he wasn't, of course, Barry's biological father, he was every sense his father in the ways that really matter. And then he just kind of sits down with Joe and they kind of have pizza. And even better, Joe says, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you find the person that killed your mom, and we're going to get your dad out of prison. And this is what's really awesome here, is that, yeah, Barry in a lot of ways is not qualified for what it is that he's trying to do. But with the help of the folks at Star Labs and with the help of Joe, he can become more prepared. He can become the man he is destined to be. And that's really kind of what the job of a parent is to shelter us and to nurture us and to guide us and to encourage us and to help us become the people that we are meant to be. And that person might not exactly be what they want for us or even who they want us to be. But letting go, letting us as their children make our own decisions, and offering us their support and courage and encouragement and guidance when we're old enough to stand on our own 2 feet, yeah, that's what parents do. I mean, I've walked a very different path than anybody else in my family. I've spent my time like 6 years of my life living in countries on the other side of the planet, South Korea and Japan, doing stuff that nobody in my family has had any experience remotely like. And my family's always been pretty cool about saying that they believe in me and how proud they are of me of going out and doing these things. And that has over the years made a real world of difference. And I kind of think it kind of covers what's going on there with Barry and Joe. Before I get him cool comic book references, the villain this time around is, of course, Multiplex. He's a villain I've heard of, but I've never read. I think I've only read like 1 or 2 things with him in it. He's just not a character I'm really very familiar with. Now Simon Stagg, the bad guy businessman we see this episode. Stagg Industries got mentioned several times over on Arrow, and Simon Stagg is basically just kind of a Lex Luthor-ish sort of character, whose major enemy is Metamorpho. We even see his security chief. He's referred to in this episode as Mr. Java. And in the comics, Java is a caveman Simon Stagg found frozen in ice and then thawed out. At some point apparently taught English, and then kind of turned into his manservant. Yeah, that is absolutely, totally true. Of course, this is from the days when comic books were at times completely and utterly ridiculous beyond all description. But still, it's nice that they kind of acknowledged that, and especially since, I don't think we're going to be seeing Simon Stagg again. But we'll talk about that and all in a bit. To briefly talk about Iris a little bit more, as I said, her kind of future is that she's going to be an award-winning journalist, and I like how we get to see that really great scene with Barry, just sort of confessing how he feels to her, and of course, the fact that he's in love with her is now just almost as bad as the fact that he has superpowers now, is a superhero. I mean, can you imagine having all these incredible and amazing things that you want to say to the person you care about the most and you can't? And then, of course, they also have that really nice twist where Iris decides she's going to write her paper on the weird things, this weird red blur that's saving people over the city. I really loved how last episode Oliver kind of referred to Barry as being like a guardian angel. It's very, very reminiscent of actually how the Flash was described when he was introduced in a miniseries set in the future of the DC universe called Kingdom Come that came out back in the 90s, and it's kind of, after all these years, somewhat of a legendary story, and with good reason. It's very, very good. But the idea is basically in the future, the Flash has just become so fast that he's almost beyond human. He doesn't really sit around and talk with anybody. He just constantly is on the go, zipping around, righting every little wrong in his city, and that the people there just constantly feel like there's an angel on their shoulder every moment. And I just thought it was a very, very lyrical and beautiful description of the Flash. Of course, that was written by Mark Waid, who's perhaps probably like the most famous Flash writer of all time. And guy wrote a lot of great Flash stories. Go hunt those up. But anyway, not much else to say about nothing really else to say about Iris. Oh yeah, except that coffee shop that she works at, Jitters. That's indeed a place from the comics, and in fact, somebody noted, I think that the actual design of the sign for the place is apparently taken directly from the comics. I mean, that's just a ridiculous level of detail, but I love it. Nothing really particular to say about Eddie Thwon this episode. Moving on to the Star Labs guys. Not a huge amount to say about Cisco, just apparently, rather than random people on, like, over on Arrow, it tends to be the newscasters on Channel 52 that give the villains their goofy names. Or perhaps I think Felicity might have done it once or twice, but apparently it's like Cisco is going to be the source of the supervillain names from now on, which is kind of cool. That's a nice little note for his character. Now here we get to have Caitlin fleshed out a little bit more. It's mentioned that her fiance who died was Ronnie, and of course those of us who know the comics or have just been paying attention to the casting announcements know that she's referring to a fellow by the name of Ronnie Raymond, who he's somebody from the comics, but we'll save that for a future discussion because could be relevant. But anyway, a lot of people like how Barry seems to be the only person who can really get Caitlin to smile. Apparently, Snowberry is a big thing in the shipping thing for the Flash fandom already. Again, remember, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really take sides in shipping. It's not my kind of thing, but hey, whatever gets fans turning into the show, right? But it is interesting to sort of look at this and wonder if maybe Caitlin doesn't see a little bit of Ronnie in Barry, and doesn't really want someone like him to come to any harm. Now, Now I'm familiar with the comics, so I know what Ronnie Raymond's character is like, and he's not really a geeky science dude like Barry. I think it's more a case of Caitlin sees someone who, at their heart, is a very good person, and she just doesn't want to see someone like that come to ill. Speaking of Barry, are you a moron? Why the hell are you hiding this from the folks at Star Labs? I mean, granted, he does it only the one time, but yeah. And I also love how at the end that Cisco comes up with those high energy protein bars that he gives Barry, and that is again something from the comics. They basically it's kind of the idea that early in his days at the Flash, while Barry was still getting used to his powers and all the changes that had happened to his body, that he ended up having to slam these high energy protein bars all the time to constantly just keep up his metabolism. So the fact that they're bringing that in, I love that. That's just such a nice little nod to the history of the Flash. And then once again we come to Harrison Wells, the guy who just makes you go like, oh my. Now again we get to see him, kind of helping Barry mend fences with Joe. Those two of them coming to an understanding, really getting Joe in Barry's corner. Got to see some nice bits with him and Simon Stagg, and then we get to see Harrison Wells murder Simon Stagg, and kind of go like, yeah, Barry needs to be protected. And as I've said, Simon Stagg is a very kind of Lex Luthor sort of guy. If Barry gets somebody like that on his tail this early in his career, that could potentially be really bad. And Harrison Wells knows it. So he's sort of shaping up to be sort of like this evil mentor guy in a funny sort of way. And what I love is when we're watching Harrison, now that we basically know for sure that he's evil, just sort of wondering like, oh man, what is underneath what he's saying there? It's kind of like this. The question is like, does everything he say have a hidden meaning to it? And I love that. And then, well, there's the question of is Harrison Wells somebody from the comics just operating under a different name for the sake of suspense among the fans? And well, somebody who's got quite a few Flash comics under their belt, all I gotta say is Zoom. I mean, it's been noted that this helping Barry in the most twisted and horrible way possible, well, that's Zoom's MO all over. Now, whether or not Harrison Wells is in fact Hunter Zolomon, the real Zoom's real name, is remains to be seen. But yeah, it sort of looks like they're trying to have him shape up to be Zoom. And oh baby, this is good stuff. I mean, at this point, I'm just wondering, like, okay, I mean, if the show gets a season 2, and dude, there's no way it's not getting a season 2. Are we gonna get Black Flash? Oh, I mean, really, if you're a fan of the comics, just when you see like last time around we get references to Crisis on Infinite Earth. Now it's look like we're probably almost certainly going to get Zoom. It just sort of really opens the floodgates and wondering just like how crazy is this show going to go on the mythology of the Flash and the DC universe as a whole. I mean, are we going to get guys like Max Mercury and Jesse Quick and God help us, maybe even Bart Allen? Like, can you imagine if Bart Allen showed up? And if you don't read the comics, those names might not mean anything to you, but folks, it's just, oh, It's so much good stuff, so much good stuff that they can use for this show. And if the show, after only 2 episodes, keeps on being what it is, this is the stuff of geek legend, people, and it is wonderful. I'm a happy fanboy. Alright guys, I think that's enough for now, so let's just call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.